this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week I spoke with Rachel Hedman in the US, who is the head of Story Crossroads, and I found her wisdom and experience to be really, really different from anything I've experienced within storytelling so far, particularly competitive storytelling. I'd never really thought about storytelling as a competitive thing. So that was an interesting conversation, and I learned a lot from her because she's been involved for about 30 years. So there was a lot to learn from Rachel in this episode. I hope you enjoy the interview with Rachel. Welcome to this week's episode. This week I'm speaking with Rachel Hedman, who is in Utah in the United States. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you. I feel welcomed.
Great. I'm glad you feel welcomed. So we start the podcast by asking you how you got your start in storytelling, and tell us about where you've come from and what you do now.
Crazy enough, this is my 30th year in storytelling. I started as a sophomore in high school. So that would be 1994. And so now being 2024, ta-da, 30 years. But I almost didn't do storytelling after my first attempt. I had some friends who said, "Hey, Rachel, you're so animated. You should do something about that." And they told me about forensics, which is a public speaking contest. And I looked at the categories, and the one that jumped out at me was storytelling, because it was the only category where I didn't have to memorize. And I did have to know at least 5 different stories. I didn't know which 5 stories would be chosen by the judges for the 3 rounds, but it was still something that was much more spontaneous, like we see in the art of storytelling. So I sign up to meet up with the coach and have a one-on-one, and I chose a story. It was an African story, one that actually more Southern Africa story that is called Big Keel, Little Keel, and I performed it, but I got so many things wrong. So I got the plot wrong. I forgot the ending. I mixed up voices of characters, and it was not supposed to go like that, but it did. And I already knew how bad it was, but I was waiting for the coach to tell me those things. But instead, and perhaps the list was just too long at that point, she just said, "Well, make sure you sign up for more practices." So that was actually harder for me to hear than just hearing the list, I think. So when I was on the bus ride home, I was in debate whether or not I was going to continue storytelling, because she hardly knew me and I could just, quit now. It's not like I even went to a first tournament, but I also had a part of me that wanted to prove that I could do this. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be a great storyteller. So I did keep practicing, but not with her. I didn't sign up for any more practices, which is very big shame on me. But I did practice in the basement, in my closet. My family probably thought it was crazy hearing all these strange voices coming from the downstairs. But eventually I went to the first tournament. There's 3 rounds, and usually you get 3 5s if you're new. You're trying to get 1s, and if there's more than 5 people in your room, then every 5 and more, they all get 5s. And so when it's done and we're on the bus again, and the coach says, "Parkinson," because that was my name at the time, "Parkinson, you got a 3, 3, and a 4. That was really, really good for someone's first time. And she said, "Parkinson, I need to hear these stories again." So I told the Big Keel, Little Keel story, and also the other stories, just like, much better. and then it just kind of progressed from there. So I mean, I guess it can keep going, but really that was really that big moment that I knew I loved it. But it's strange because I came from this competition world,
Mm.
and then eventually it wasn't about that at all. After high school, there's not the competitions. I mean, technically these days there's like slams or things where you can compete and win prizes and things in storytelling, but really I had to find a different reason to
Mm.
love storytelling. And more I found that storytelling could connect, and it can be the fastest way to build bridges with people. So I transformed how I love the art, but that's the beginning.
Yeah, amazing. I'm quite intrigued by the competition aspect of it because I haven't, apart from the myth-off, which they do in Europe,
Oh, yes.
yeah, I haven't heard of, and that's not the storyteller, it's the myth that is judged and the characters in the myth, and it's not necessarily the, sorry, not the storyteller. So I'm just curious about the what it feels like to do competitive storytelling compared to what you do now.
Well, it's very limiting. One of the strange rules, and here's the thing, storytelling in forensics wasn't even a national event. It was something that district by district could be different. So in mine, I had to know 5 different stories. There was a phrase or a theme, and you had to have a story to work for each theme. So, for example, one of them could be a pourquoi story, and you have to find any pourquoi story you want, but there you go. It had to be 7 minutes long. You had a 30-second grace period, and if you went over that, you're disqualified. Yeah, so a lot of people, they would be really, really sad if they couldn't tell a 15 or 20 minute or who knows how long. So, oh no, 7 minutes. And then this was a rule that was definitely not found throughout the nation if they had a storytelling competition, was sitting down. You were not allowed to stand up. Now you could use your arms, definitely use body language up here, maybe even kick out from your chair. It was really fun when one time we had a competition and the only chair that we could use was a chair with wheels on the bottom. And I think all of us storytellers thought, oh, hurrah, we could maybe move it a little bit more if we wanted to. And but otherwise, if we stood up, it would be disqualified. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. There's another storyteller who is still in the storytelling scene who also was in the forensics, and she did super awesome in that as well. So it's bit by bit I do find these people,
Mm.
but
Well, I was
usually
going to ask if many people
yeah,
went on. Yeah.
yeah, some people do go on, but a lot of people in the storytelling world, they tend to come from the library world, or they come from theater world, or maybe from the writing world. And when it comes to youth storytelling, you don't always have that as the beginning of the story. But I do love that I had that chance as a high schooler, and because I had some friends who said I should do something.
Mm. Yeah, but also as a training ground, I mean, going with a time limit, it's good practice. Being an effective storyteller with the time is a huge skill in itself. And then being able to come up with a story on the spot, from what you've been given, that's another quite an advanced skill. So I think in terms of training, it would have been excellent for you, and anyone else who's doing it. Yeah.
Well, every year there were 5 new themes, and even within the season, you can switch out your stories. You didn't have to suddenly commit to that the whole season. For other categories like solo serious or solo humorous, you have all this memorization to do. You didn't usually jump to something else unless it really, really wasn't working. But I did love that the flexibility in that category was awesome. And every year that meant I had at least 5 new stories, usually more because I was playing around with some. So that actually built my storytelling repertoire. I mean, it could have been that I only had 1 story as a sophomore and 1 as a junior, 1 as a senior. I mean, then I could have maybe only had 3 stories by the end of high school, but instead I had probably at least 20 because I would switch out stories. And that's a good core thing to kick off with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so after school, what was your pathway from that point?
Well, I did miss the gathering of people to compete. And when you're waiting for your scores, you would all be playing card games or things and anticipating, looking up to see if your number is going to be flashed up on the board. I mean, that was always very thrilling. And then I suddenly didn't have that. I didn't have you might say, the storytelling family,
Mm,
or performing arts family. And
mm,
I didn't want that to go away, but I knew things were different. So when I was in college, when I went to Brigham Young University, I started the BYU Storytelling Club as a freshman because that's how crazy I was. And I actually put a booth out in what was called the Gauntlet, where if you walk through it as a student, people would, pass out flyers like crazy, and you have to just take them so you can get through, or you take them so then you can throw them away, or you take them so then you actually do something with these flyers. And so I had to become part of the gauntlet and try to, pass out flyers and try to actually gain members. And the most exciting part of the gauntlet was when I was just telling people about it, and suddenly a student, she just dropped her backpack and stuff was spilling out of her backpack, but she didn't care, and she zoomed right to my table and just she was grabbing a piece of paper and like scribbling like crazily, and I said, is there any way I can help you? It's like, no, I'm just jotting this information down about the storytelling. Oh, well, I can tell you about it. And it was really exciting to see that someone would be that, they didn't even worry about their backpack. They wanted to and I was really pleased. We actually, as a storytelling club, we didn't even have to advertise to get performances.
mm.
We would constantly be called or emailed because there was email barely at that time, and we would get requests from all over the community, not just on campus, to perform. And because of that, there were many themes, many genres that in 1 week's notice we just had to prep as a club. And the people bringing us in knew that we might have just barely learned about this, and we did our best, and I thought we did really good with what we were presented with.
Yeah,
So
amazing. So
yeah, whew.
it sounds like you said, I need a community, I'm going to make one because there isn't
Right.
one there, which is just beautiful. I really love that. So what sort of stories do you like to tell? Do you have like favorites?
Well, the funny thing is, the first 7 years of my storytelling life or world, at least when I recognized the art form, was I was doing all kinds of genres. So I was experimenting. I was doing, because we were getting all kinds of requests. There was going to be obviously your scary stories, ghost stories. You had to have those ready at a certain season. You had to have, possibly some personal narrative or folktale, fairy tale, tall tale, historical. I mean, it was all over the place. I love them all. I think they're all amazing. However, I do prefer folk tales and fairy tales. I do love those,
Mm.
but specifically I love adoption folk tales. So
No,
those are the stories that intrigue me the most. And really, with my family, we have adopted 3 kids through foster care, and I wrote a thesis on adoption folk tales. I actually defended my thesis just a couple days right before actually our first adoptions. I mean, it was just something that is so universal. It was really comforting that adoption and the feelings around adoption, feelings around birth parents, adoptive parents, adoptees have really been the same.
Mhm.
The legislation and policies and all those things can vary, but really the grief cycle, there's a major grief cycle for
Mm.
all people, in adoption, including adoptive parents. And then there's also this discovery of identity as an individual, as this new formed family that, or just, who am I? Am I allowed to have more than one mom or more than one dad? Am I suddenly betraying my family by loving another family as well? That's I mean, there or just so much, or even on the adoptive parent side, which I am, is you are celebrating because yes, you suddenly built a family, but there is the grief of not actually biologically having children, though there's people adopted and they actually have biological children as well as adoptive. But in my case, my husband and I, we tried to have kids for 10 years, went and saw doctors, and in the end it was something that adoption was the way to build our family. But I do grieve that I never experienced an actual physical pregnancy, but I definitely had the paper pregnancy, is what we say in the adoption world.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's lovely. So have you taken those adoption stories and made them, like into a book or into a show or into something for the adoptive community?
A lot of those goals have been put on pause because of what I do with Story Crossroads and what I then formed down the road. But at least by having my thesis on adoption folktales, technically I kind of have a book, if you count the thesis, but it's not one that's in the libraries and or anything. I was even just at the National Storytelling Conference, I was telling someone that within 20 years, I think I'd like to do that. And I know 20 years is a long ways out, but I also know that right now I have to focus on Story Crossroads, that there are some exciting things and some big transitions that need to take place before I can, in some ways, focus on myself. I don't really get to focus on my personal storytelling so much these days, because, and I choose that because I want to actually create the space for storytelling that is accessible and affordable for people. I want there to be an increase of compassion and reaching out to what I like to call the forgotten audiences, the people who are, let's say, are homeless or are in mental health institutions or in hospitals themselves, people who can't go to a festival, people who can't go to a house concert or something. I want to find those people that maybe, so I feel like that's more urgent right now.
Fair enough. So tell me about Story Crossroads.
Well, Story Crossroads, that actually was a dream ever since my college days. So here I competed in storytelling. Then I started the club, and then after college, I knew I needed something more, and I didn't have a name for it at the time, but I knew that there needed to be some big encompassing event that really connected all 6 major continents somehow. So for lack of a word, it was called World Story Conference. I know, not the super most exciting name, but it was more of a placeholder name. And later on, I got my master's in storytelling at East Tennessee State University, and I would actually connect with my professors there as well as other fellow students, and I would have brainstorm sessions. And this would be outside of class time because we all had our, we have to actually still do our homework and everything what we're supposed to do. But people would choose to come and I would record them and I would ponder people's ideas and I would explain and saying, hey, this, I'm not sure what this is yet, but if you could have this ideal storytelling gathering, what would you do? What would you have? And it was great because some of the students at East Tennessee State University, well, we're not from the United States, and it helped expand my my mind in that way. And I was thankful that they joined us as well. And it just got me thrilled. Well, but I hung on to it, and I still would do brainstorm sessions even after the master's program. And every so often I would do this, but I wasn't in a rush to kick it off yet. It's kind of more, I didn't want to start it too soon. I was waiting for, like a sign or something to tell me this is the moment. This is why you prepped all these things. So technically it kind of was 20 years of kind of gathering and thinking when I felt like the moment came. And when I moved out to Utah, and there was this Murray storytelling showcase that connected with the Murray School District and also the Senior Center. They had a director who didn't want her youth and older adult tellers to simply tell one time for their festival. She wanted there to be a county level event. And she had heard, her name's Marianne Kirk, she had heard that I was pondering a bigger event that would be at least a county size event. And she kind of pinpointed me at a conference and said, hey, so when are you going to start this thing? And I said, well, I don't know, I'm waiting for the right time. And she's like, but have you had a community planning meeting? I said, well, I haven't had that kind of meeting. I've had all kinds of brainstorm sessions. She's like, I know a lot of people. Let's schedule this. Now, this was an event that was in May, and she wanted to schedule something like the next month. I'm like, sure, fine. So she invited her people, because I knew storytellers, but I didn't really know more beyond storytellers, I have to admit. And we had 29 people come to that community planning meeting. And they represented so much. So we had Utah Humanities there. We had Utah Division of Arts and Museums there. We had a couple people from a couple cities within the county there. We definitely had storytellers. And I mean, it was just crazy. So I had these big pads of paper that I slapped on the walls. We did, we did a brainstorm together as a group, which was nice to have people within and outside of storytelling brainstorm, by the way. And we would talk about needs for whatever this was, wants of whatever this was, collaboration, and then even possible problems that we might be facing, so we could address them now. And by the end of that meeting, we finally had a name for what this was, which was Story Crossroads. In fact, Carl Bailing is the one who gets the credit for that. I love the name so much. I told Carl, I said, that's such a great name. Are you sure you want to share that name with me? Maybe you want to use it for some project you're doing. He's like, no, it seems to fit for what is happening here. And it stuck. And suddenly, finally, all that time, when you have a name and you have a big meeting like that, I thought our first festival would happen in 2017. But the people were so energized in the room. They're like, no, we want it in 2016. And I told the people, I said, but we need to fundraise. Like, there's no money right now. I'm like, no, just do it in 2016. Like, okay, fine. I mean, that's kind of funny when you're being pushed and like, fine, we'll start it earlier. Like, that's the sign. And then it just kicked off. And so what we do is we celebrate with community tellers and professional tellers. And we have about 40 community tellers, usually about 30 plus are youth tellers, kindergarten through 12th grade. And then we have about maybe 10-ish older adult tellers. And then we have about 15 professionals, and most of them come from the Utah area, but we have at least 2 that are out of state. And we have field trips and we do outreaches. And yeah, we do get to reach out to the forgotten audiences. We send storytellers out to the detention center. We send storytellers out to the primary children's hospital. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's one part. I mean, we actually do year-round things by now, but yeah,
Well, I attended one the other day, the session with Jim Brule on grief, and I thought it
Yes.
was I thought it was wonderful, and to be able to access that from Australia, yeah, it was a really great resource to be able to jump in on that, to be part of those things. And I think that's the great thing about the internet, is that the community can connect across the world, so which is really, really super. So I just wanted to check with you, um, if you've had any special moments that in your storytelling career. I mean, putting aside the bigger picture stuff, just in terms of, actually, I'll ask you for both. So really special moments individually as a teller, but also really special moments as a community builder.
Oh boy. Really special moments. I mean, sometimes every day is special, right? Um, ah, well, one special moment was with Story Crossroads. One of the things we do is as a story camp. And with that story camp, it's open to the public, and you're looking at ages 8 to 17 that are welcome to come. And it's usually held either outside in a park or it's held inside a library. And there was this young woman, a teenager, who attended, but she had been with us from the very beginning. She was at the very first Story Crossroads Festival. And she then, instead of being in a school district that feeds into our festival, she then was homeschooled, which we still would welcome that. But then she had some health conditions take place, and with oxygen tubes and all kinds of things that just kind of got in the way of her beautiful storytelling. But she still persisted in the art. And when I saw her at this story camp, she had gotten extra treatments, and she was able to be much more, you might say, free, because they figured out a way to not have as many tubes or something. They figured some things out in the years. And she was ready to do storytelling again. And she had discovered that story camp. So when I saw her, even though it had been several years, like, we definitely knew each other, and she definitely knew Story Crossroads, she's been part of it. And it was beautiful to give her and her mom hugs. It just was this great reunion, and how she thanked me for giving a space to tell stories, not just at the beginning, but to have that wonderful moment with that story camp. And I wasn't even the one teaching or anything. I was just more the coordinator and making sure things were smooth. I always work with a whole bunch of storytellers, but I was glad that I happened to be there, just to be a support for the presenters, and as a result was able to witness an impact that had happened. Or reminds me of a time when, again, another presenter, but she was doing 10-week program in this older adults living place. And one of the women there, she had recently lost her spouse. And she knew about these once a week to learn storytelling, and wasn't sure if she was ready yet. So she sat in the back of the room. The coordinator of the living center encouraged her to go and said, well, at least just continue sitting in the back of the room if that's what you need to do. I know the presenter's not going to push you if you're not ready. But she kept listening, and bit by bit, she participated more and more, until by the end, she was ready not only to join in on this activity, but she actually told a story. And she later then shared with me and the presenter that actually helped her with her grief cycle. She was able to process things even though that's not like that was the intention. You get to learn storytelling, right? But as a result of learning the art, it also was a way for her to process her grief.
Mm.
And she gave us permission to share that story. And her name's Cynthia. She said, yeah, you can even use my name, so I'll say her name now. Her name's Cynthia. And she not only did a great job in telling stories, it was strong enough to even be featured at our festival itself.
Wow.
Which was great. That was be able to go beyond the walls of that senior living home. But I mean, so there's those moments. And I guess I still, even if I wasn't the presenter, because I guess I'm linked to Story Crossroads, that if Story Crossroads hadn't existed, then those presenters wouldn't have had those moments, which then meant I wouldn't have had those moments. So it feels like those are personal moments.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you're really instrumental in facilitating people's journeys into story and through story.
And that's what I'm lucky to even know. I mean, I'm sure there's stories, and that would be great if everyone was open about it. But most of the time, people experience it and then they take it home with them, and I only have their smiles, or maybe they're leaning in during a concert or a workshop to get that. Though, I mean, we have feedback forms all the time, of course, for any of our events, and there are people who share things, but usually I know there's so many more stories that I'm unaware of. But what I do know, just one of those stories alone helps to give me the energy that I need to keep doing what I'm doing. Because it's hard work. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of grant applications and grant reports. In fact, even today, I have a deadline to get a grant application in, and then I get, that's the not so exciting side of it. But I still do it because I love what can happen as a result. Because we suddenly got the funding, we can bring in this presenter. Because we have this presenter, now we can have this moment. And because we have this moment, that person's moment can then be shared with someone else so that they can have a moment. So it's just, I guess I kind of get that, you might say, love that way.
Yeah, I can hear that. That sounds really lovely. So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. So what do you think is at the heart of storytelling?
What is at the heart of storytelling? It depends on how you want to think about that. What's at the heart? I mean, there's what you would hope would be at the heart of storytelling versus what is. And then you have to wonder, are you looking at that from the side of storytelling for us all as human beings, or are you looking at it as storytelling on a more organized storytelling level with this movement of storytelling where you have the platform tellers, or you have people jumping into schools, things that are intentional storytelling, right? Of storytelling, is this intentional storytelling? Is it kind of this storytelling that weaves just kind of through our subconscious as human beings? I'm going to turn the question on you. Tell me more about what you think about the heart of storytelling, and I'll respond to that.
Okay, so if we could strip out all the categorization and bring it back to the essence of what it is and why we do it and why we need it today, what is that all about?
Well, looking at it that way, we are in a world that is so divisive. There's so much polarization of any and all kinds. It's crazy. And in any time of history, this is probably the time most of all that needs storytelling, that needs this understanding and compassion and empathy from storytelling. And it really does come in that order: understanding, then compassion, then empathy, because at least hearing those stories of other people, whether or not you agree with them, can suddenly get an understanding of why people feel the way they do, which then the more that you hear that, or depending on how open your heart is at that time, there can be compassion instead of perhaps your initial instincts or your initial responses. And then finally, and this is the hardest thing to get to, would be empathy. You know, how often do we really reach empathy? I think storytelling is very easy to get to the understanding stage. I think it can definitely get to the compassion stage. Empathy, I'm trying to think of where I've seen that strongest. Where I've seen that strongest. I know that one of the workshops, I didn't attend this, but I know that it happens in the storytelling world, is working with people who are incarcerated. You know, how much do we understand there? You know, there was a workshop about talking about working with refugees. And I know actually, in fact, you're not even supposed to use really the word refugee. Usually refugees don't want to be called refugees. And of course, in this moment, I can't think what other word to say. But about people who are displaced, people who are displaced and needing to get acclimated, right? That's more kind of a reminder of you know, these are people who they may actually have degrees, you know, they may have these great, amazing specialties, and yet in this world of with refugees, people have this one type of image for them. And yet if we hear their stories, understanding compassion, and then get to empathy. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I think that's a beautiful response, though. I think I love how you've broken it down into those 3 levels, which helps as a storyteller try to make sure that we can get through those 3 levels to make sure that we're encouraging empathy in our listeners and in the story, and picking stories that can help build that. Because you're right, the world needs
Well, but
it.
not all storytellers do aim to
No.
bring understanding, compassion, and empathy. Actually, here's the thing about storytelling. Storytelling is so powerful. It can go both ways. You know, it can be something that is for good, but it can be for ill as well, if not careful. Or it can be, sometimes storytelling is used specifically to shock, and there is no intention for there to be any healing, just to, sometimes storytelling is to get you mad. though though it can be a good mad, I guess, if you're going to do something good about that, you know. I think about you know, one of the special interest groups with the National Storytelling Network is eco, you know, about the environment, and you could definitely get mad about what's going on, but you want to not lose, you don't want that anger to be so big that you as a storyteller lose the ability to understand, and you lose the ability to be compassionate, and you use the ability to be empathetic. I think we as storytellers have to be careful ourselves that we can get so wrapped up and passionate about something that we unintentionally are doing the opposite of what we had hoped to do, that we are bringing in some negativity and that shouldn't be there, that we always need to have this hopeful side. And I don't think we all do that. I think we want to. I think most of us want to, but I think, and we don't usually talk about that sometimes we actually cause problems if we're not careful.
I guess it's a duty of care. Would you say it's a duty of care that we have as storytellers to do good, not evil, with our words and stories? Or
I think it's a possible role. I don't know if I would call it a duty. I get, you know, maybe 10 or so more years ago I might have said that, but I think I'm really careful to to say it is a role that we can choose that could match what we're trying to do. I did actually do a thesis on the American storytelling movement, and part of it was exploring the roles and identities of the storyteller. But just because you have this whole list of roles doesn't mean that all those roles need to be done by every single storyteller. These are just possibilities. So for example, the role to preserve, preservation can be a big part of that. Promoting understanding, compassion, and empathy can be part of that. Being able to call people to action can be part of that. So all, but duty, I don't know.
More of a duty of care, like a responsibility, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, even then, I guess because everyone has their own choices and what they pursue, and there's many different paths in this world of storytelling, and I think that's why I'm hesitant to say, well, this, all storytellers, this is a responsibility they have to have. I don't know. I don't know if
I'm just thinking like we had a show last year, and we had a woman ring up and say, "Can I buy a ticket? Are there going to be any triggering things for me in the show?" And we were like, "Well, we don't know what's going to trigger you, so that responsibility was back onto her. Well, we're going to do a show. It's for adults. If you want to come, then that's on you, that responsibility, I guess." But also, yeah, I imagine there's lots of different layers within that. Yeah, interesting.
Well, because what could be considered wonderful for one person could be something that needed a content warning for maybe another one, but we don't realize that. Elizabeth Ellis had taught us, and this was in the Storytelling Masters program, she had taught us that you will offend people. As a storyteller, you will offend people, whether that was your intention or not, you will. And that as storytellers, we have to be ready for that. And we have to know how we would respond in that situation. But it doesn't mean that we can't prevent it. It will happen. So we could acknowledge that this could happen, and we can take the steps that we need to try to either decrease it or at least provide the warnings necessary, so that now it's up to them. And then if they then complain at that point, or whatever might happen, then then realizing to not take it personally, that you did what you could.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's how it turns out.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that is really good advice, actually. I'm going to take that on board, to just think about what would happen if. That's, and
that's what Elizabeth Ellis encouraged us to do, like have a backup plan. What would you do? Because what if that person complains to the school, and now the school's coming to you, or they complain to whoever hired you, or whatever, or maybe they get so into it that they even go to the press. And now you have someone calling you up, and you need to give a comment on something. What we do, I bring this up because it's getting harder and harder for me to do outreaches with schools with Story Crossroads. And I know I'm not alone in this, because some places, they want you to actually provide the script of what you as a storyteller, or if you bring in storytellers, what they're going to do. And I've had to explain and saying, well, sometimes they don't even know what story they're going to tell. They're very professional. They have these amazing specialties or whatever they're going to do. And I can show you clips of things online, but that doesn't guarantee that's what you're going to do, unless suddenly schools are going to basically choose the stories ahead of time, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of being able to adapt to your audience. What we love so much as storytellers is to be able to adapt to the audience. And if the freedom of the storyteller is taken away in some level, at some level, then something is lost there. And yet this is the world that we're living in. Legislation more and more is coming into place because parents can be wonderful, but they can be really destructive in the education world. And one of the things that can be really destructive from parents would be those who go to legislation complaining, saying we need more censorship, we need more control. There was even one storyteller who not only did they have to provide a script, but they had someone from the PTA follow this script while that person presented. Now, again, we are not theater. It definitely means this person and this group of people do not understand the nature of storytelling if we're going that far to things. But that's how divisive our world is. When we talked about how, you know, why is storytelling important? It's because we're so divisive, because we will face the people who will call forth for censorship, banning something. And here it's not, and it can be something that we have a program that you wouldn't think would need any kind of content warning, any kind of legislation, and suddenly you're faced with it anyway. I mean, we just, but again, I guess going into the understanding, pulling myself back, okay, so there's this angry parent. Can I somehow, as a storyteller, still be empathetic towards this angry parent? Am I able to step back and not just be angry at the parent who's angry at something else, right? But can I pull back as a storyteller and go, what is going on in society that they feel that strongly about something? I may disagree with them completely. In fact, I'm sure I do. But can I at least, as a storyteller, instead of just reacting to this, what feels unfair, can I, who promotes and trying to have understanding in the stories, can I have understanding as a person in this moment? And if it's going to be something that is such an obstacle, are there other places or ways that I as a storyteller can do what I'm trying to do in society? Maybe the route to take to bring understanding is not always through the schools, but maybe it's through another gathering or another place where that is not as censored or studied as much.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
Yeah,
there's ways to, if that's what we're trying to do as storytellers, we have to then be able to do that ourselves.
Yeah, it's good to do. Another good piece of advice, which is my next question, actually. So for emerging tellers like myself, what sort of advice do you have, or beginning storytellers, what sort of advice do you have for storytellers who might want to build a community like yours?
Well, I mean, if you want to build a community, then the first step is go and do it.
Just like that.
Just go and do it. Well, and it's way harder than what it sounds, right? There's always some excuse that we're going to give ourselves to not do something. Even when it's something beautiful, we will still convince ourselves not to do it. So your job is to then convince yourself to do it. And how do you convince yourself to do it? Well, for me, I did take a long time to get convinced. I mean, I was gathering, and I probably could have kicked things off a lot sooner for Story Crossroads, but I was kind of, sensing things out. And I was trying to balance the short term and the long term. So as a storyteller, if you suddenly are thinking, I want to get into this art, it doesn't mean you're suddenly going to make an organization event. If you're focused yourself personally, the first step is you just do it. So that means you're going to be bold, and maybe you're going to adopt a school, or maybe you're going to adopt a daycare, or maybe you're going to adopt a senior center, or whatever it is. I truly believe in the apprenticeship model. that you really don't have to be paid at the beginning. In fact, I wasn't paid for the first 7 years, and that was okay. I was totally fine with that. Of course, that was 3 years of my high school and 4 years of college. And then after college, that's when there's payment and everything else. I think that just picking up the phone, or whether that's texting these days, or having a Zoom meeting with someone who might have connections with another place to tell. You can do house concerts. I mean, you can host your own house concert and get yourself running, because it's one thing to tell to a wall or a mirror.
Or a cat.
Or a cat or a dog or a iguana. I don't know. all pets could get that. But there's something about being able to tell. And even if it's just a gathering of 5 or 10 people, I bet you have at least a couple neighbors or some, that can swing by your home, and you get the experience you need. So if you're an emerging teller, you can create venues. You don't have to wait for people who have the venues. Did you know that just where you live is a venue? That's a venue.
Perfect.
So that's what I would say. Just do it. There's gonna be so many things that pop in your mind of why not, or you'll get the imposter syndrome, and which every single storyteller feels, by the way, is the imposter syndrome of why should I be here, or do I deserve this? Well, yeah, you're a human being, therefore you deserve it. Go and do it.
Yeah. Oh, they're awesome pieces of advice. Thank you, Rachel. So if people want to find out about you and Story Crossroads, where would they find you?
Well, it's very easy to go to storycrossroads.org. So yeah, even behind me, you can even see the spelling, storycrossroads.org. And from there, you can explore all kinds of things. There's even on the lower right side of the website, there's a chat bot. And there might even be a picture of me with my little gray cap. And any messages that go through that, it comes to me, and I get a little indication on my phone and everything. And that's a very easy way if suddenly you go there and you want to be guided even more. I mean, you can still do self-exploration at storycrossroads.org, but yeah, just reach out.
Oh, you've been so inspiring. I'm really, really excited to hear all the things. And I've got like 5 people in my head who would love this episode. So I'll be telling them to come and listen to it. So thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.